welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I'm your host, Jessica, and I'm so happy to be welcoming back one of my favorite authors and somebody who, I've actually, met IRL several times.
We're real people. We
We're real
exist.
people, Clay.
Flesh and blood.
Yes, and so, the last book that we talked about, and I know you've written, a few since then. You've dabbled in some YA, right?
Yeah. Shiny,
Yeah.
happy people.
Yeah, we did not get to talk about that one, but I would love to read that one, actually. It's been on my list. But this one, so when we talked about Wake Up and Open Your Eyes, and I was like, "Are you okay, Clay?" And you're like, I'm okay." And I think we actually did this at a live event nearby at Theodore's Books in Oyster Bay. But we had asked you what you're working on next, and you said a love story, and I was like, "For real?"
Man, for
And
real.
and I guess any book could really be a love story if you really think about it, but or not. I don't know. Depends on what your definition of a love story is. But you were actually legitimately working on a love story, but but it's got a horror spin, of course, which is why you're here today.
Yeah.
Unless that was a completely different story you were talking about.
Nope, 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 nope. That was the one. It's funny because after working so hard on Wake Up and Open Your Eyes, I I still didn't feel like I was done with the possession motif. And I feel like there was still some story to be kind of wrung out from it, but take it in a completely different direction, and tell a love story. A love story for very, very bad characters.
So, tell us about The Devil in Me and where the idea came from for you.
Yeah. I mean, it honestly started off just by kind of asking those kind of fundamental questions of what is the very nature of possession? And, thinking in terms of demonic possession and how one loses their sense of autonomy within possession, and how if you are possessed, you are no longer in control of your body. And how scary is that? And I feel like I wanted to kind of refract that story, or that kind of fundamental notion of loss of autonomy, within the framework of a love story. And I know it's kind of counterintuitive to what most readers might kind of expect or anticipate, but I I just kept kind of dwelling on this idea of what if you have a boy meets girl kind of narrative, where this is like a boy meets demon, and the complications that ensue when you have two separate entities who are coming from kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, who meet somewhere in the middle and have to kind of navigate the thornier issues of I have no soul and you have no body, and we are attracted to one another, compelled to one another, drawn to one another, and we we need to find a way to make this work.
So this is horror romance. Is it horror romance? Horror romance? What's this niche genre called?
It's funny because I mean, it is called a horror romance. If I'm being honest with myself and with all of you, I think it is a horror novel embedded within the structure of a romance novel, a horror story hidden within a romance novel. Because with romance, you have to follow some very, very, very specific rules. In particular, the HEA, happily ever after. which was an interesting kind of construct to work towards. But yeah, I mean, I horrormance is this idea of blending two disparate elements together and giving them kind of like equal footing. But horrormance, I mean, romance within horror or horror within romance have existed since, the beginning of time. I think that like one could make the argument that Dracula is a love story, and like that whether there was a shelf space for it at your local bookstore or whether anyone was calling it horrormance, love stories within horror have existed forever. I think it's just a new-ish trend that the publishers are paying attention to and want to see if they can get any traction on it. Because like what beforehand there was Romantasy
Romantasy is still going strong, by
still
the
going
way.
strong,
Still
right?
going strong. Yeah.
But where are all those Twilight readers going to go? They need some more spooky romance books.
That's interesting that you consider Twilight horror romance in a way.
Well, it's got
Huh.
vampires. It's got werewolves.
Yeah,
It's got
I
love.
suppose. Well, let's talk about your book. So you have these two main characters. You have Jordan, who is human-ish.
Yeah,
Ish.
yeah. He he's it's funny because like he's a guy who gets in an accident, dies for some total of like 2 minutes, give or take. And in that time, he goes to hell or goes to what one could kind of construe as the kind of going down as opposed to going up. And and he comes back. He's revived, revitalized, rejiggered. Um, and how does one live after grasping the fact that when death comes for them again, they're not going to the good place. They're going to the bad place. And it kind of unmoors him and sets him off on a pretty bad path, I guess you could say.
Well, I mean, he falls in love.
He does.
To, I suppose that depends on who it's really bad for.
I mean, yeah, it's good for him and Lilith, but it's bad for everyone else. It's bad for the world and maybe readers too.
So Lilith is this like Lilith from of the mythology Lilith?
No, I mean, I, I'm gonna say no. I feel as if in this kind of grand spectrum of names, Lilith in Devlin's side is is one of Legion, and in the kind of rules of this book, demons exist, demons, devils, the names themselves kind of get bandied about, but whether or not they are the kind of archetypical uh, creations that we've had in, stories and myths and the Bible and, testaments, old or new, like it's not the like it's not the Lilith of our world. It's basically like you
Is
need to
it the
call me
Lilith of
something.
Frasier and Cheers?
Wouldn't that be amazing? No, I think it's like you need to call me something, so you might as well call me Lilith.
Yeah, so talk about her because she was really interesting also. Like she's already from quote unquote the bad place, depending
Yeah,
on how one defines it. I mean, for her, she defines it as home.
yeah, yeah. Um, her there, I, I, I feel like I'm gonna say their responsibility or their kind of goal in life is essentially to um, uh, lead those who are already kind of like predisposed to badness and just tip the scales because there is this kind of like uh, concept of like you're either going to go up or you're going to go down and but there is a sliding scale, and it helps to tip the scales a little bit more. So anytime Lilith comes to our world, the land of the living, it's there. They are there to basically influence and encourage everyone to do bad, to do things that would lean them more towards the bad space, the bad place.
So
And they're
yeah,
very good at it.
yeah, yeah. But so Lilith refers to themselves as we.
Hmm.
Talk about that a little bit because that took me a bit to kind of get my headspace into. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the idea there is that when Lilith is outside of a body, it's just them. But when they have entered and taken root within a host, they become we. Because it's not so much that they do have control over the body, but it's also to suggest that there is a sharing of like a cohabitation of space. It's someone else's body. They're just driving. And I think that's one of the more unnerving things about possession when you think about it. Like, are you aware of what's happening? Do you want to be aware? Would you rather turn the lights off and kind of wake up in a stupor? There is a certain choice. Well, choice, like, I guess it depends on the host, but the kind of construct is once Lilith is in, it's kind of that thing of like, we're going to go for a ride and, there will be some wear and tear and you might not be happy with everything that happens, but uh, here we go.
Which is interesting because you do get to meet the person who Lilith possesses for a majority
Yeah.
of the time, or at least like, the first time and then a little bit later on. Um, that was kind of fascinating and interesting. How did that play into your writing of the story?
Well, you know, in this kind of construct of two separate characters trying to kind of find a way in which to make this relationship work. Jordan is compelled towards Lilith, and Lilith is compelled towards Jordan, but things are really messy and complicated at the beginning, much like within many relationships or burgeoning relationships. The only difference here is that there is a trinity where Lilith is in the body of a host, and the two are trying to kind of navigate how to make their relationship work within the host. And they come to learn, no spoilers, but it it doesn't work. But it takes them a while to get to that place. And I think that that's a distinction that I want to make, that given the fact that these two want to be together, the decisions that they're making along the way of that relationship bring in a third party that is not is ultimately a third wheel, and that's not a good thing.
I loved how you played with the romantic book beats, like the beats of a romance.
Yeah.
And there was definitely some gore and some horror and some body stuff going on there. Did you have a lot of fun with this one in particular?
I mean, it was really interesting to kind of follow the beats of a romance novel, uh, and kind of recognizing that through a different lens, these story beats are actually quite terrifying. And I think it's that, through any lens, you can take a romance story and turn it into a horror story. You can take a horror story and turn it into a familial drama. You can take, a comedy and turn it into a I don't know, a drama. Like I think that it's the way in which the story is told that kind of or through which lens you choose to tell that story. And I found myself feeling energized by the idea of like, okay, if this was a romance novel, which it is, uh, this is what would happen at this point in the novel. And then I would reach that point and I would say, well, how does that work within the world of this novel, of these characters? And the kind of discovery, the organic discovery was that like it leads to some very dark, devious, dubious places.
Did you always know how it was going to end?
I did, but I didn't know how dark it would be. Um, you know, I kind of explored the story, and I don't want to go too close to spoilers, but I'll try. I knew that there would be a specific union that would happen inevitably, but I didn't realize what that would mean and what was at stake. And that was an interesting kind of uh, complex wrinkle to reach. And with the help of my editor, that kind of discovery of like, okay, this story wants to go darker, because if it didn't, it would undermine the kind of like basic premise of the story, we thought. So along the way, there was like this moment of like, whoa, this is getting really gnarly. And we were like, well, this is what the story is, so we have to kind of like commit to it. And that was yeah, that was terrifying. So you asked if it was exciting. I'm gonna say yeah, but also scary.
That makes a lot of sense. So with this one coming out, what is on the slate for you? Are you taking a break? Are you looking to blend another genre?
Um, I have another book coming out in March. This is my first Tor Nightfire novel, and it's called Mr. Lonely Hearts. And Mr. Lonely Hearts is it's almost kind of like it's in conversation with Devil Inside, where it's like a young woman who's just recently kind of gone through a really bad breakup, uh, accidentally manifests an imaginary friend from her childhood who basically wants to be her boyfriend.
So it's
Um,
it's kind of like Drop Dead Fred, but not.
yeah, it's basically Drop Dead Fred, and but if Fred was Freddy Krueger, like
Oh
that's
yeah, Rick Mayall is annoying, but I kind of would hang with him more than I'd hang. I mean, he's not of this world anymore, unfortunately, Rick
yeah.
Mayall. He was I was a huge Drop Dead Fred fan, by the way. If folks listening to this don't know what Drop Dead Fred was, um it was a movie that found a niche audience among terrible reviews, but I enjoyed it. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, it starred Rick Mayall, who I found to be very funny at the time. I haven't watched that movie in a while.
And
Uh,
Phoebe Cates, Phoebe Cates.
oh yes, Phoebe Cates was in it, and I absolutely loved her in that role. She was so good. But getting back to it, yeah. So if Drop Dead Fred was Freddy Krueger,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. That sounds very interesting. I actually would very much like to read that book when it comes out, Clay.
Well, March 2027, you'll get your wish.
Let's hang out and chat about it on the
Yay.
podcast or off the podcast.
That would be awesome.
But check out The Devil in Me, which will definitely raise some eyebrows in a lot of ways. This one, who is the publisher for this one?
It was Mira. It's a Harlequin romance book.
That's what I was waiting for you to say. Yes,
Yeah.
Harlequin romances have changed a lot since I was younger, and Fabio was on the cover of everything. I'm dating myself a lot, by the way.
I mean, I there is a rather perverse part of me that is taking a little bit of glee in this idea that this is a Harlequin romance. I can't believe it, to be honest, because it is a dark one, and I yeah, I don't know if readers know what's coming their way, but it's a doozy.
Honestly, I do give the publisher though like a lot of credit for, really just like pushing some of those boundaries. I read another Harlequin book um a while back, and I believe it was called Their Monstrous Hearts, and it was super, super creepy. I interviewed the author for that. And again, I remember, just being in awe of the fact that, and it's great because people grew up, seeing Harlequin romance, but and you could still have that. But I love that, that the publishers are willing to mix genres now. So this was a good one. Thank you to the publisher. Thank you to you, Clay. I can't wait to read Mr. Lonely Hearts.
Hey. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure.
So once again, this was Jessica. My guest today was,
Clay McCleod Chapman.
and we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.